Welcome to South Harmon. Welcome to South Harmon. Hey, welcome to South Harmon. We glad you here today. Another AMA. Ask me anything. Superchat is cool if you wanna pay to play. Like and subscribe, that's what we really appreciate. Let me introduce you to the tear down king. Mike McNutted, ask your questions, he'll answer anything. ATM, you know I don't put them graphics on the screen. Glad you tapped in now, stay tapped in for the team. Hey, everything is posted. Go follow the socials. South Harmon FF tag us if we get noticed. Welcome to South Harmon, we glad you here today. Welcome to South Harmon, we glad you here today. Another AMA. Welcome to South Harmon, we glad you here today.
Yeah.
What's up, everybody? Wednesday night AMA. Starting a little bit later, but for good reason. We got a guest. A man who was built for this. Brian, also known as WaLLrus, joining us. And this all stemmed from a February 1st tweet. I had to go back and look. Big shout out to us. Really appreciate it. And just how organic it all comes about. Where you said, hey, you should tag him. Get us on the show. Say less. Here we are. Valentine's Day.
Done, man. Valentine's Day. Let's set it up.
Man.
How you doing, Brad?
So it's free to come on the show, but this stuff's really expensive. You guys got to set me up on an AMA on Valentine's Day. That cost me a lot. That was an expensive thing for the wife out there.
I was going to say, man, yeah, you're sending us bottles, and I'm like, hey, babe, I'm about to go drink this bottle I got in the mail with WaLLrus. You know, it's going to be a fun night. So this is fun, man.
Dude, he sent your
Man,
boy
anytime we're outside
bourbon.
crypto,
He sent your boy bourbon.
You know?
And you know I don't drink bourbon, but
We are tonight.
you know,
Cheers.
that was the exchange, right? Like Mike was going to step up my fantasy game. I was going to get him drinking like an adult, and that's what we worked out. We thought it was a good pairing, and here we are.
Boy, this has the makings of a great night. This has the makings of a fantastic night. I appreciate you trying to step my man up, though. Honestly, he's been needing that nudge. You know, like sometimes with me, he kind of puts me off. He hears me too much. I talk a lot, so we need someone else to push him on it.
I'm gonna ruin it with a lemon, 10 milligram Swedish Zen, boys.
You better be careful, man.
Is it Swedish?
Yeah.
I caught one of the streams the other day. Didn't you get that out of like some kind of Bengal tiger from Siberia or something sprinkled on that thing?
I got some Russian ones too, and the other day I tried a 33 mil at work. And, ooh, baby. So the plan was tonight.
Carlson, bring those back.
The plan was tonight I was going to pop a 50, right? I got a 50. But then I saw that the drink of choice was going to be bourbon, and I got a lot of bad, pent-up memories of my bachelor party going horribly wrong on bourbon. So
I think, Mike, you can go ahead and, since you're kind of reliving it, you might as well share with the group, you know?
So I had a bachelor party. Kind of was all over the map with drinks. But anyways, we ended up at this place. One of my buddies who was throwing the bachelor party, he ran into his mom, so we're saying hi to his mom. She was out with a friend of hers. They're older women. She's a wife of a doctor, so she's pretty well off. She goes, oh my God, it's your bachelor party. We're all going to do shots. I'm like, hey, let's go. She goes, we're going to do Maker's Mark. What is that, like the old one, though? Like there's a date, Maker's Mark.
46 probably.
Yeah, I was about to say 46.
Yeah, the old shit, right?
You guys are shooting the good stuff. This is all right.
We're
this
taking
has
shots of
craziness.
this, right? So we all do a round, and everybody else bows out. Well, she had already ordered a second round, so I'm sitting there doing 8 shots of this shit by myself because I'm like, this is fucking $30 a fucking glass. Let's go. I mean, I ain't gonna fucking pass this up. I felt so bad that she ordered it. Nobody else wanted to do it, so I did it. And let's just say the next day, if I could have thrown up, I would have been in heaven. I tried everything humanly possible. I mean, I was fisting my own throat. It still didn't work. That's how bad I felt. So that me and Bourbon have a long history together that we don't.
Much like those, it's like much like those
you're
shots.
0-1.
Yeah, you're 0-1 exactly.
You're just 0-1 on bourbon.
Just 0-1.
We're gonna get you a good one now. You'll be back to 500.
Boom.
All right, we're running it back.
I had to, I got him to take his first little sip of bourbon at the house. I made him an old fashioned. He's like, all right, this isn't so bad. Now we're going neat here. Actually, not quite neat. You're drinking it on the rocks. So we'll get you neat soon. Yeah.
I'll get there. Eventually, that ice is going to melt.
There you go.
I'm going to need a report.
But this is some good stuff, man. It's called Garrison Brothers from Texas. And WaLLrus sent us this, and you found us organically, man, which is crazy. Just trying to get better and like kind of thinking a little deeper, which led you to us as far as different than the mainstream content. So love having you on, man.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Yeah, man, it was one of those things that's cool. One, I'm glad the bottles found you guys well. Yeah, like just one of those things. I do the crypto and all that kind of crazy stuff on the side. That's why I go by WaLLrus, and that's one of those things. None of us crypto guys can go by our real names. That's that's just degeneracy in our little neck of the woods. And but always I've been a big fantasy guy for the last couple of years. But I take stuff real obsessively. I'm always trying to figure out all the crazy stuff. I like playing poker and all the kind of game mechanics and game theory stuff. And all the typical fantasy stuff. It's fine for people who are kind of casual or that stuff. Want to just see, hey, who's the top 5 rookie picks or whatever it is. But that's not the stuff that's like super fun. And now the money's popping.
That's starting off right.
Ooh.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I figured you wouldn't mind a little money thrown across the screen.
Money talks. Money talks. The cool. I mean, again, it's even a question like this here, right? Like like league resets 25 first, like this is the fun stuff, talking about years out on builds, the RB is dead one, that kind of just, the real economy side of it, moving around at a high level. There's not that many people who take the game, all the way to the edge like that, man. That shit's fun, man.
Love it, man. I'm glad you're digging it. And that's, I think for Mike and I too, it's what like we were looking for when we started making content was when we were consuming it, right? The same thing. We're trying to figure out, like, we want someone to dig a little deeper, get a little crazier on stuff. So let's get into the super chat. We got Tyler here. Appreciate the super chat, Tyler. Fellas, in a Dynasty Empire startup, 12-team Superflex, start 11. I traded back. I have 325 first now. The league resets when the Empire is won. Back-to-back picks here on the clock. 103 and 104. Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, Brees available. Any advice? Mike, I'll let you start. What do you think here, buddy?
3 and 4 for me, right off the jump. Those are the ones that stand out. You already traded back. You got 325 first. Tyreek's a decent enough play. Here's the thing, though. It's an Empire startup, and a lot of people just like, oh, I'm going to go for it, and I want to win the Empire pot right off the jump. Here's the thing, man. Anytime you do a startup, the teams have never been closer or will never be closer than coming right out of a startup, at least the parity, right? There's going to be probably 3, 4, 5, 6 teams all within a range unless somebody does something absolutely fucking crazy. So even more so in an Empire, like the ones that I've been in, it just feels like people always want to go for it. Like, hey, I got a big reason. Or you get in one of these high stakes dynasty leagues, kind of the same principles. People are like, oh, it's a $500 entry. I got to go for it. Like, I can't rebuild. That I want to be the guy who's going to rebuild. Like, I want to be the guy who says fuck it from jump and just starts hoarding assets and value, because everybody's going to be fighting with each other. It's unlikely you get somebody right out of the gates that wins the Empire, like takes it down back-to-back years. It's a hard thing to do. I want to be that guy where in year 3 or 4, my team is so fucking loaded every single year leading up to that point where, like, I have no choice but to just start pushing in draft picks and, like, throwing them like it's money at strippers, basically. Like, here you go. Just fucking take it. All right? Yeah. And then I want to be that guy going for it. So for me, it's the rookie picks here for me, the most valuable, 3 and 4.
I agree. I think to the point you're making about the Empire, it kind of forces people their hand a little bit, right? Because the idea is if you take it down a couple times in a row, it's over. And I guess here's the thing for me: if you talk about the best like dynasty team I've come to build, it's because I actually convinced everybody else that they should go one direction and I went the other, right? And because it already is kind of set up for you to do that with the Empire, like the way the league's set up, you have on the clock here, Mike. So he says right now he's on the clock at 301, 302. He's got 308 and 4 picks in a row at the 4-5 turn. I mean, you kind of, because of this stranglehold you have in the next, like, 24 picks, you can get 103, 104 right here. Like at 308, the difference between Garrett Wilson and whatever's there at the 308 isn't going to be that much. He's not even in consideration for me, to be honest with you. And then at the 4-5, you can kind of just continue to have the idea of you don't have to wait for forever, but you've kind of narrowed a lane to where you're going to actually have a corner on certain things in the market, because most people are going to try to go win now. And to your point, Mike, you got to get lucky, honestly, to win early a couple years in a row in a league like this.
Yeah. Brand, what are your thoughts on this one, too? Like, if this is you, what are you doing here?
Oh, it's the picks, no question. So, everything you guys laid out, you got extra firepower with 25 first, which means you're kind of leaning toward rebuild. But hey, those will be next year's picks by the time you need to spend them. But if you're looking at Tyreek, Wilson, and Brees are the best on the board, Brees is a running back. Again, dicey. Do you really want to hold an asset starting in February? Like, what are the chances Brees goes up in value, right? Like, best case is he's worth what he's worth right this second. Garrett Wilson. The Jets, are the Jets crazy enough? Did they draft Malik Neighbors? Like, does he have different target competition? Does Aaron Rodgers actually come back? Does he do another dose of ayahuasca and decides that you know what, he's going to go be a priest? Like, you don't know what he's going to do, right?
Right.
Tyreek is committal, right? Tyreek is a right now thing. Like, if you take Tyreek right now, again, he already fell to you here. He ain't going up, not in February, right? So if you take the 3 and the 4, you're looking at, hopefully, again, from looking at most people's mocks, you're probably looking at like Daniels, Neighbors, maybe Marvin Harrison. So basically, I would take every player at 3 and 4 over all of those in general, but especially in February. Like you guys talk about big on being, being flexible, but every one of those assets have question marks, and the 3 and 4 only keep popping for the next couple months. Yeah,
very good point. I like that word with Tyreek. Like, if you make this Tyreek Hill pick, it's committal. You have committed to going for it right now. Not saying you can't still if the chips fall your way, but like, you don't have to make that decision right now. And I'm just looking. What's crazy about this is, so the 103 right now, and it's already probably going to continue to move up as the draft comes around. It's already at the 212, so you got a value there. And pick 4 is at the 306. But when you think about the fact that Neighbors is in this class almost guaranteed to be high, you got Daniels, you got Drake May. You can't go wrong here. And remember, this is super flex. So you're going to have a chance at 103, 104 to grab 2 quarterbacks if the draft capital's right. And you don't have to also press the button on quarterbacks or receivers. You don't have to make that decision today. You can kind of push out your decision-making time and also your ability to trade as far as flexibility. So I think pretty easily 103 and 104 for me. And I think for all of us, we say the same.
I would be doing backflips right now, too.
How about to say, hell yeah.
You and I have done a few startups already this offseason, and the pick 3 especially. Shit, if that lasted to the 301, I'd be over the moon if I had the 301, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think I took that at like the 203 in our last startup we did, or 204, something like that. So almost a full round. I love it.
Well, yep. And to me, the other thing is, if you have 3 and 4, especially between now and the draft, they probably go up, but they give you a chance with those 25 first, regardless if it's the picks now or the players later. Either of those picks and 125 first, like that gets you talking about pretty much anything else in the leg, right? Like we're everything except for what, probably like top 3, top 4 quarterbacks, right? Like,
yep.
You say, hey, I got you a 25 first in Daniels. Who are we talking about? Like, I'm open to discussion right there, right? So I think that's the big thing. Taking any of those other guys, you start to limit that window. 25 first in Daniels, 25 first in Neighbors. Who you want? Let's talk about it.
I've kind of been big time this offseason. Adam's seen it in startups, right? Like, and he's done it too. Like, we're kind of aboard this, taking these elite wide receiver train, right? Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. I've taken Jamar Chase in one. But if you told me right now you could guarantee me like a Neighbors and a 25 first, I fucking trade back in a heartbeat. Like, I love those guys, but I'm like, okay, Neighbors is pretty good too. And you give me a first, easy.
Listen, WaLLrus coming on is the reassurance we all needed, right? We got Mike drinking bourbon again for the first time in a decade. We got, Tyler getting his picks right. Let's go. Let's get you started off, man. Yeah, I think if you were leaning that way, you were thinking the right way. So appreciate the super chat. Appreciate you being here, my guy.
You know what's crazy, Adam?
What's up? Talk to me.
Garrett Wilson's actually valued on Keep Trade Cut after the early 24 first. I thought it would have been reversed. So
really?
Kind of, yeah.
I would have guessed.
By early, they mean picks 1 through 4. Right, you divide it into thirds, early, mid, and late. So interesting. I thought it would have been the other way around. Because Garrett Wilson is up at wide receiver 6. It's just people must really lump in the 101 and 102 in their evaluation of early.
What do you got? Go ahead.
Man, I think Garrett. Okay, I'm pretty confident that Garrett Wilson's good, but everybody's pricing him like we're sure he's good. Like, we've seen other cats on offenses that don't have another guy who's the dude, and you get a big mix of quarterbacks, and they just throw him the ball a lot, and he looks like a killer, right? is Garrett Wilson Terry McLaurin, or is he Jamar Chase? I think he's Jamar Chase, but how sure are you?
Well, I mean, so there's a couple things. Actually, I have a video coming out Friday where I put him as a potential dynasty sell candidate. And like, here's the thing about the guy you just mentioned, Jamar Chase. Most guys, even if they're really, really good compared to the field, they have to have a difference-making quarterback. And right now what we're seeing with Garrett Wilson is he's being held back by his quarterback. At least that's what it feels like. And like Rodgers is going to be 40. That's if everything, like you said, he does come back, plays, he's healthy, he's there. We also can't guarantee that he's going to just make Garrett Wilson better. I mean, he should, but right now going into year 3, there's a lot of projection, and it's interesting because the ADP, most times, Mike, it feels like it'd be the opposite to the point you're making. Like ADP actually is reflective of Garrett Wilson going ahead of the 103 and the 104, but then keep trade cut because I guess they bake them all in as one, has it the other way around. But Garrett Wilson is, back end second in a startup. Like it's rich for me, man. And I'll just tell you, when you see some of the trades that have actually happened in dynasty leagues on Garrett Wilson, like you kind of fucking owe it to yourself to go just see what that looks like, man. You talk about the economy in your league. Like if there's any chance some of these trades that I've witnessed that are real money on the line can happen in your league for you, dude, I don't have enough Garrett Wilson shares. I'll just tell you that. I was looking to sell more. I'll just put it that way.
I like him too, and there's some things to be excited about with him, specifically, right? He produced at a decent clip. I mean, it wasn't anything game-breaking, 12 fantasy points per game. Wide receiver 32 isn't nothing to write home about.
Yeah.
But he had a shit ton of targets. Now,
Tons.
people are going to get lost in the fact that he had a 30% target share, which was more than fucking CD Lamb had. And people will be like, well, when Rodgers comes back and the efficiency goes up, you're also saying that he's going to have a 30% target share with Aaron Rodgers back.
Exactly.
False. Okay, false. That's probably not gonna happen. Now, if it did, holy shit! Like you're talking about record-breaking Calvin Johnson, Cooper Kupp type fucking season. Unlikely. Okay. I also want my Shiba to go to $1 a share, but it ain't ever gonna fucking happen. Okay, I'm not gonna be a multi-trillionaire. that's not how this works.
So even think about Cooper Kupp though, right? Like we just saw this with Puka. Puka came out of left field. Cooper wasn't the dude anymore. He didn't get the same target share, right? So, but with Cooper, we saw Cooper light the whole world on fire. Garrett's, with Garrett, I've seen him be really good. I've seen him get a big target share. I've seen all the pieces sprinkled out, but, unless you get all of it, wide receiver six is all of those things. I've seen all of those things a little bit spread out at different times. So if they don't all come together, then, wide receiver 6, Are we that sure he's going to have, an AJ Brown efficiency target share? Are we that sure he's going to have JJ, CeeDee Lamb, looking at one of these 25 first? If you get a team who goes really aggressively, trying to get that money early, can I take a late 25 first, whoever the 104 is, and go get a real killer rather than having Garrett Wilson? That's what I do. Let's go get a hammer.
Well, and I mean the thing too is, to the point you just made about that, like tear down, the flexibility is. See, right now, the problem is you have to make where you're putting your investment. So the way I think about it, is almost in a way like stocks. But the investment I have to make for Garrett Wilson right now, what that's going to cost me, I have to have him be that. There is no other fucking option. He has to be that for me to have that case. I can actually wait and not have to make a decision. And if I miss on Garrett Wilson, I will miss some of that crazy high upside. But really, probably I have the ability to buy something very close without as much risk, right? That's the biggest difference for me. So when you get to this range, it's tough for me to push the button on you or make that investment if I haven't seen you really make a massive difference in points per game. And I can project in my mind how it would work, but I don't have certainty with that. So that's where I tend to get out at the really high price.
This is one of the things that I always nitpick. We kind of talked about it before we got on the show, too. Just in general, how some people look at fantasy and they'll look at rankings and they'll be like, well, you got him at, 9 and you got this other guy at 21.
Oh, man, you talking tiers?
The difference
my
is
whole
it's all
Friday
about
videos
fucking
being
tiers.
dropped right now.
And I got Adam, you got one, too. I got a giant fucking tier from 8 on down into the 20s. And I don't have a lot of certainty that the difference between where I rank Garrett Wilson and where I rank Jordan Addison that they're going to score that much different in fantasy points. That they're going to be that much different at the end of the year in dynasty value. What if Jordan Addison gets a hell of a quarterback? He already had one in Kirk Cousins and started producing, but then you saw him go down. What if they bring somebody in? Like, what if it's somebody exciting that really does accentuate Jordan Addison's skill set? And all of a sudden, Jordan Addison's at a 15, 16, 17 fantasy points per game season across from Justin Jefferson. And Garrett Wilson is the number one target in New York, and he's only putting up 15, 16, 17 fantasy points per game. That's going to shift dramatically, where it's like, well, if something ever happens to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison might score 30 fantasy points a game, and then we'll all be on his nuts. That's how it goes. So
yeah,
he's in a tier. He's in a big tier. Not that I think he's a bad player. I can't differentiate in a lot, like Brand was saying. We just don't really know. And like you were saying, Adam, we haven't seen enough. Like, I haven't seen him put up 18 fantasy points per game to go, yeah, fuck, this guy's really good. Stop hating on him. He's been at 12.
And I mean, the thing about it for me, Mike, and I'm sure your rankings are probably pretty similar. Now, if in my tier 3, so my tier 3 is wide receiver 8 to 24, okay? Everyone in this tier, like, I don't project them. Like, I could see the scenario, but I'm not, like, saying with certainty I think they're going to be a producer like the guys that are ahead of them, and that's why they're not in the tier above. But, like, realistically, if you told me I have to pick these guys where they're going to finish in points per game, I'm telling you I'd have a pretty bad fucking outcome with that crystal ball, like telling you where they finish relative to the rest of them. I'd be awful because there's too much variance involved in this game. That's the other thing. Like, I think part of it is understanding that there's only so much that you can project confidently, even if you have all the answers. Like, basically betting on the fact that you don't know a little bit of it is okay. And I think it's all right to, like, make that assessment.
So I'll start real nerdy and I'll bring it right back to football. Everyone stay with me for 2 seconds.
You can stay in the nerdy department, man. Don't worry about it. You're good. Go ahead.
So there was a cat named John Kelly who was a mathematician who worked for AT&T in the 50s. And he basically wrote this formula trying to separate signal from noise. And it was for telecommunications. What everybody ends up being able to use it for is all the sharps and all the marks when it comes to sports betting. And essentially what it comes down to, again, he's got a formula for it, but it's basically taking the probability of the outcome, what happens when you win, what happens when you lose, right? And then the odds. So what it basically works down to is the greater your perceived upside, the better you think your odds are over what the actual bet is, the heavier you bet, right? So if I tell you there's a coin flip, 50-50, right? But I say, I'm going to give you a 3-to-1 payout. Okay, you're going to go a little heavier on that, right?
Right.
If I tell you it's a 100-to-1 payout, all right, let's get
load
up
up,
cards, boys. It's
let's
time to
load up.
lean in, right?
Yeah.
So that actual expression is called the Kelly criterion, but that's the math side of what tiers are. What tiers are saying is, I'm not willing to value this bet different than this bet, but I'll let you pay. And that's what the whole idea is, right? So if we're saying that the difference is, minus 110 to minus 150, but it's wide receiver 8 to 20.
I want the juice.
You pay for wide receiver.
Yeah, gotcha.
You pay for wide receiver 8, right? So you can either look at this, if we're looking at this from a team perspective, it can be a little different because at some point I also have to just take the hammer and win, right? So again, we would take that, we would take the process play or the criterion or the plus expected value. It goes up and up and up. The larger the field, the larger the starting lineup, the more portfolio you look at it, right? So if I've got one team, I got to stake my flag somewhere, right? But the bigger the team gets, the longer the timeline, the bigger the league, the bigger the portfolio, the more you say, no, I'll take the value over time. That's how I'm going to win. But that's what the tiers are. So when people talk about tiers, I think one side that just another way of kind of helping people look at it. It's not just saying, hey, I think all these guys are the same. It's make somebody else pay for the certainty to pick at the front of the tier and the back of the tier, right? So if they're going to give you wide receiver 6 price for Garrett Wilson, cool. Tell them thank you. Cash out. Go bet on wide receiver 10 and take the EV.
Yeah, and honestly, like to that point, man, it's like if it. I think the more information you can use too to like further this out. If you told me that I could now have a look at like the way you have your tickets, right? And I could see, oh, this guy is like, you have this guy really a tier below, and I can get to, that minus 170 type range out of that, man. That's that's where you can really start to utilize this. And I think you can. I'm willing to go down a tier, like if you're paying me the right odds. So I love that. That's a great analogy you just brought, man. I love that.
I'm fucking furious, man. We've been doing this over 2.5 years at this point, Adam, and I've been talking about tiers and tearing down, and fucking Brand just explained it in like 3 minutes better than I've fucking done in 2.5 years.
So,
Yep.
so
I just did a whole video, and I think I need to redo it. You know.
Hey, but that's the stuff that makes it so fun. That's why your guys' content resonated. It's almost one of those, like, there's like engineers in math, right? Some of the stuff from just doing the things that I've done in other industries, like I kind of have a feel for the math. So I can't rank them the way you guys can, but I can come play the economics game, right? So this is something like that. The bigger bet. You guys did this too with the running backs are dead, which is why that episode like resonated. I was cracking up because you guys kept thinking like, well, do I really want to hold this guy? No. Okay. So you kept pushing it, and you're like, man, I don't know about any of these dudes. Push, and it got to the end of like, hey, I think that my perceived edge is dramatically bigger than the market, right? Hey, I'm not willing to take these things going to zero on injury. I'm not willing to take them go to zero if they lose opportunity. I'm not willing to let them go to zero or get, take these big hits in value, right? So it literally I heard you guys go through this, and you kept going, no, I'm going to take my chips off the table. No, I'm going to take my chips off the table, as you guys kept playing with the odds game, right? And so you can do it tier to tier, but at the extremes, that was an extreme example. You guys pushed through and were like, hey, RBs are flat out overvalued. I don't want these bets. I've got better places to put the chips. And you literally went all the way to like, all right, guys, let's see which one of you clowns is going to go ahead and be drinking too much bourbon, been out at a bachelor party, and you guys are going to go ahead and take JT in the third.
Boom.
I'm not doing it.
Exactly. And you know what? It's funny. That was the next point I was going to get to. Is almost like in this tier 3 of receivers, but to the running back point, this is, I think, just it's a game theory for fantasy and dynasty in particular. Is like, okay, I know that if Garrett Wilson hits, right, that I probably, whatever ticket I cash out right now, like in production, I may not be able to necessarily buy that back, because Garrett Wilson, like production wise, if it all really hit, is that dude. But I know that I can't really say with certainty that's going to happen. However, if I can get liquid, right, so I don't have any of that risk now, and I can wait until week 10 if I need to see what's actually happening, right? So all this uncertainty that I don't have, I actually don't have to have a crystal ball. I can fucking see in real time what's happening, and now I can, because I took maybe 90% of what people are perceiving his value at, but it's liquid. It's not going to go down because it's attached to draft capital. Now I have the opportunity to go buy someone in this tier that maybe people were sleeping on. Maybe it's DJ Moore finally with Caleb Williams is having a year, and he's attainable because he's not as old, or he's older, not as young, right? So, yeah, I think that's a great point. Man, you kind of have some. I love this insight that you're bringing to. Basically, he's dressing us up, Mike. He's making us look more official than we are. Exactly. Like we out here just yapping, but this guy's putting it in really good perspective. So I love this,
jacket. Man. He's got me drinking bourbon. He's explaining shit that I've been working on 2.5 years better than I fucking ever did.
I mean, the fact that you got Mike drinking bourbon with just ice is amazing to me too. By the way, he's not doing too bad either.
So. But it takes both sides, right? Like, you'll add some clarity, but like, I can't make the same clarity vows. You guys have, like, I've seen how you guys, sit there with Koopa, work through the warp tool. Like, it's just a little different insight, right? So, it's clarity to things that you guys like intuitively kind of solve with the game, and just adding a little math where you're like, oh, okay, that does make sense, right? Like, this stuff is pretty sound economics just in general.
Definitely. I think too, it's interesting. The more I've been doing content, Mike, and Brandon WaLLrus, like it's one of those things that, I mean, it's kind of humbling in a way. I mean, if you were to go back and watch my first pieces of content, Mike's first pieces of content, like luckily I'm humorous, and if I can laugh at myself, but if I wasn't that way, I'd be like wanting to not ever let anybody see that, because I know how bad it is and how much I've evolved, right? And I think the thing is, because we're kind of surrounded with guys like Koopa and different guys that have different levels of expertise and what their strong suits are, like for me, because I just come up here and talk every day and all the time, this is what I think about, like it's given me a lot of stuff that I didn't necessarily like coin or come to, this is why I think this way, but having all that, the more like bigger picture understanding really helps me, I think, with content, like figure out, for example, you're telling me right now, I can already tell what your strong suits are and where I don't need to tell you shit, right? But to your point, you come to me and say, all right, well, maybe I have all that, but I'm trying to get some more, like, how do I get this warp tool to really help push me over the edge? Or how do I, and I think if you think about yourself as a player that way, right, and you think about your market, that's what I'm trying to do as a creator, is help people, like, actually become more aware of how they are as a player, right? And then figure out where you need to improve and what your aspects are where you're good, where you don't have to necessarily, like, don't ignore that. You still want to keep focusing on that, but where can you actually improve on your weaknesses?
Get on board with that one, man. Oh, this bourbon's hitting.
There he is. He's starting to come. He was getting too when he gets too quiet, you know he's starting to hit it, man.
Get the hot face going.
All right, let's see here. We got not a super chat. We got a question here, Mike. Mystic Flame says, inbox offer to 12-team Superflex. We're starting 11. Give the 106 and Dotson. Get Jake Ferguson and JT. I don't have a tight end, and I'm running with Warren and Roshan at running back. No.
1,000% no. 106 way over JT, and I will rather take the shot on John Dotson than Jake Ferguson. Not that I hate Ferguson, but it's a tight end, and you'll find any of these turds laying around later for free.
Yeah, and now the only thing you don't give here is the tight end premium. Now, I will admit, like, unless it's crazy high, it's not going to sway. It's going to sway it at all for me. But
it better be 3 points per catch.
It better be. It's got to be 2 or north. But, like, again, at that type, like, I saw some things in Jake Ferguson that I like, and I definitely think that being attached to Dak is a good thing at the tight end position. However, like, I don't really project Jake Ferguson to be a difference maker right now. And the only way I would ever want to do this is if you're telling me that I can guarantee, or I feel like I have a very strong chance of getting a difference maker, to send away the 106 right now and not get a first-round pick back in some capacity, right? And then especially with the running backs are dead conversation. Like, I like Jonathan Taylor quite a bit. I'm not giving up a mid-first in this class. Dude, the mid-first in this class, there's a chance you're talking about a quarterback in Superflex right now, depending on how high these receivers go, man. Like, just to even think about that being possible, there's no chance. And I'm off the Dotson train. So it's almost he's ancillary in the conversation for me here.
I love the top 7, and that's without J.J. McCarthy, being in that
being
conversation.
certain. Yeah.
Right.
That's
without Atlanta drafting him at 8, hypothetically.
Oh,
right?
God. Do you imagine?
So
it'd be chaos.
I'm all the way out to the 8 now. I'm all the way out to like 108 as far as being like blue chip fire. Like, so we're all dead set, right? We all know better that it's Caleb, Drake, than Daniels. We all think that's the draft order.
Yep.
Okay, well, right now everybody's saying basically penned in that Drake makes the 102, right? Okay, well, Drake may not even go at 2.
Yeah.
We see Daniels go ahead. So if we see Caleb, Daniels, Neighbors, Marvin, and then you have Brock go, you might literally end up with what we think is the 102 right now in value at the 106. And we all know that we can't pick quarterbacks, right? So I'm telling you that right now, what we're calling the 106 may be actually the value that we're calling the 102 right this second. Watching how Drake May and those guys move around. So to me, there's going to end up being 4 quarterbacks that are valuable that go probably top 15, if not at least top 20. And then the other one is even the wide receivers. So I like Malik better than Rome Odunze. But I'm not as good as it is calling as the NFL. So I've seen Dunze mocked ahead of time. So to me, there's going to be 4 quarterbacks. We'll figure out the order later. There's 3 wide receivers. We'll figure out the order later. And then Brock. So I'm taking the 108, 107. That's going to be one of those value things where I'm saying right now, the value's going to move. We all think we know player evaluation. We're going to all end up being wrong. That stuff will move around. And they'll end up being value out to the 108. So there's no way I'm getting rid of the 106 right now unless someone's paying.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other point, too, about this is, like, let's even throw this caveat or, because the tight end premium is not said here. Let's pretend for a second, like, we're living in this world where this is a crazy tight end premium. Do you know what's probably going to happen for the 106? Is it's going to be even more valuable because Brock is going to go ahead of it.
Yeah.
Or you're sitting there and you're just saying, I'll take Brock and flip him for something crazy to somebody. So,
or again, if it's not Brock, then it's going to be Neighbors or quarterback 3.
Right. You, at 106, it's basically like you're penciling in that you have this crazy value because of the heavy tight end premium if you were to take Brock, or he goes ahead and now the value is even more at your side. So, yeah, 100%. Mystic Flame, I would say this, man, again, to our running backs are dead point. If you told me that wasn't JT now, and we're talking about, a Garrett Wilson type or something, like I'm not even saying I would take the trade, but now I'm having a different conversation, right? Like in startups, they're only going about a round apart. But the asset here in JT as the prize, I'm not liquidating out of a great class to get like that piece today in February. So to the point of that video, it kind of really speaks to like, this is the opposite way I would like to go. I'm looking to get out of running backs and then buy them back later.
What would the pick have to be to buy Jonathan Taylor straight up for you?
Dude, I mean,
9,
10.
It's got to be. I was gonna say it's got to be probably. It's got to be at least 10 for me to consider. And then now here's the thing I have to know. This actually speaks to the thumbnail. I'd have to know my market and my like economy, and I'd have to say to myself, okay, I know the risk I'm taking on, but I know in this market, actually buying a running back like Taylor really is not happening often. So I feel like I'm actually like taking on some risk, but the upside of being able to do that now because of the draft type, that'd be the rare scenario, and it'd probably be the 110 for me, just because like at that point, I think there's too much shit we always like. Right now we're talking about stuff in certainty, and to your point, we think we know evaluations. Guys, it takes one extra quarterback getting drafted. It takes a name that hasn't really gotten much hype yet being the buzz of talks after the combine, right? Like, remember the combine's happening in less than a month here. Like, there's so much shit that can happen. All it takes is one extra person for that 109 to be in the tier. And in this class, I see it going that way more than I see it going the reverse, because the NFL has continually passed on quarterbacks. And this class has good quarterbacks, and I think too many teams are going to need to feel like they're pressing the envelope as opposed to being able to wait again.
Well, the other part is the market side of JT, right? Okay, so if I take JT right this second, okay, in the future moving forward, how am I going to get better value than, say, 107, 108, 106, right? Okay, so someone's going to give me an early first? Okay, so now I've got to go find a contender with somebody else's first. Because if you actually want JT, you don't have a pick projected that early, right? So now I'm down to a contender who likes JT, who's got somebody else's pick. That's the only way I can move that for a pick of higher quality straight up, right? Or JT value goes up, okay? How's that going to play out? Like, what's going to happen to JT that makes him a 105 plus or gives me a too late for some kind of comp that way, right? Not happening.
Yeah,
okay, so,
it doesn't exist until the season starts and he's smashing.
And then
even
again,
then,
who
he's got to
it?
have like
Not
a
the people with the
year.
player.
Yes, correct. Wait, say that again. Sorry.
Right.
He's got to have like a historic year for that to happen, right?
Right.
Like you're talking like 2,000 yards and 20 touchdowns. And then it still doesn't change the fact that he'll be 26 going into the following year. So even when you get in that cycle, you're like, do I want to trade for a 26-year-old running back who just smashed?
Actually,
Nah.
Well, here, go ahead, WaLLrus. What were you going to say? I know you had something cooking.
No, that was the same thing, right?
Okay.
So it's gonna be a contender, right? He's gonna be a killer. Okay, well, I don't want his pick. His pick's gonna be later, right? So I've got to go find a guy like that who's either one gonna give up a top tier wide receiver, right? Okay, well, he's probably not gonna want to. He's a contender, right? So he's gonna, unless he's got a Garrett Wilson type at some point there, which again you could have got right now up front rather than trying to wait later and scalp and hope that you can get him later down the road. But again, you don't want his pick. He's a contender. The guy who wants JT, you don't want his pick, right? So you'd have to go find a contender who wants JT. JT has a good season, and he's got someone else's pick, or happens to have a young wide receiver, a killer QB3 that maybe you can go like JT and a Baker Mayfield, and he's got a Tua at QB3 or something along those lines. Like that's what you're looking for, right? So
yeah,
we're taking a really narrow window and betting on a lot of stuff to happen.
And honestly, just as as you're talking about this more, I'm listening to both of you, and again, this is from a theoretical standpoint, like game theory. If you're making this trade, forget that it's February, like forget all the timing. If I'm making the trade where I'm sending away a draft pick, a mid first, and a guy like Dotson, who I'm worried about projection from production, I'm right now getting rid of all that to buy production. Like, Mystic Flame, I think what I would say is if I'm going to make the bet where I'm losing my liquidity to buy production, and then we add in the timeline, it's February, you got to be telling me I'm destroying somebody. Like, that's when I will get rid of my liquidity at this time. I'm almost, even on strong contenders, I'd rather go the other way. I'd rather give myself a little more flexibility and get the liquidity now because it's going to go up until April, as opposed to going this way. If I would make this type of a trade if we're talking about it's October, I have a contender, and this is a 25 106. All right, I want the production right now. I don't need production until fucking September. Like, that's the biggest thing, right? I don't need production right now, and that's what you're buying right here. That's what the hope is, you know?
Think about it, too. Like, the RB production's kind of something that's easier to replace. When we did an episode for Canton Bound, we looked at risers in dynasty value. And it was all over the place with running backs, man. Like, you had the massive ones. Kyron's the one that sticks out, but you had the Rashad Whites of the world. Like, those guys fly up boards, James Cook, etc. Not a lot of people do it at wide receiver, which already leans me to, like, want wide receivers in this kind of position, right? Because it just doesn't really happen, man. Like, a Nico Collins or a Puka Nacua will come out of nowhere, but everybody else, nah. That stuff doesn't really happen. And then if you look at it, too, like, it's the running back position. What do they deal with? Injuries. What did Jonathan Taylor deal with last year? Injuries. And then when he came back and he actually played, if you look at WAR per game, he's not much more valuable than a Derrick Henry. Like, what's a Derrick Henry cost you? Definitely not the 106. He might not even cost you the 206.
God, no. He's a – dude, you might be able to – get him for a late second right now, but yeah, to your point, he's a second round pick for sure. Even if you're being aggressive, you can get him for a second.
If you like the situation changing or whatever, like,
sure.
Couldn't you make the same argument about Isaiah Pacheco? Like, what better situation do you want being on the fucking Kansas City Chiefs as far as efficiency goes?
Send the 306 for Ty Chandler. Like,
there you go.
Just go take that shot at production, man.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you have a lot cheaper options. Here's one I'm curious your guys' thoughts on. I have a feeling for Mike, and I'm just curious. Honestly, I just want to hear you put this more eloquently than I probably would. So, Addison and JSN for the 101. What are your thoughts, WaLLrus?
On the team where I'm the 101 and I don't have a lot of other stuff, I might be willing to split it and hope they both hit. On most teams, if it's my 101, I'm open to it, right? Like, hey, there's two top tier wide receivers. If they both hit, they're easily worth 2 first, right? So am I essentially saying that if I hit right, the 101 turns into 4 first, kind of a vibe? On a team where I have to have it, maybe. But if I'm any other team where I traded for an early 24 first and turned it into the 101. I want a hammer, right? I want someone that I can say, nope, this dude right here is going to make a difference on the team. Or I want the what's it? The iron price. I want the iron price for.
There you go. Yep, right? The iron price.
So like that trade there, like again on a team where I'm like, hey, I've got to split the hand and try to hit to get back in the game. So if you took over an orphan with the 101 and it's your best piece, I might take. The idea of Addison and JSN, 2 upside guys. I'm honestly not that big a JSN guy, so this isn't one that I would take. But again, the process on it, I might take 2 early stud wide receivers that are young, that have a lot of upside, because I need them both to hit to try to get back in the game. But if it's anybody else's 101 and I've got other pieces, no, I'm not taking it.
Michael, what do you think?
Smash the 101. I don't care if it's best ball, lineup, deep, shallow. Don't give a shit. It's the 101 for me. No question. I can understand maybe if I was really shitty in the 101.
Yeah, you need depth, right.
Right. But the 101's already starting within first-round startup draft capital, right? Like a 12-team league, that's the 110, the 111, the 112. As soon as whoever the consensus 101 is decided, whether it's Caleb, Marv, Jaden Daniels, whoever the fuck it is. That's the kind of value you're talking about. Jordan Addison had a nice year. JSN had a nice moments towards the end of the year. They're both relatively going in about the same range of startups, but they're also in a giant clusterfuck tier of wide receivers where you go, we had the Garrett Wilson discussion, I don't really know. And Adam, if you're telling me I'm in a startup, I don't give a shit which one it is. I could trade my 5'11 and 6'01 because that's where they're going, right? 5'12, 6'01, whatever, that 5'6 turn, and I would be able to move into the first round, even the back end first round of a dynasty startup. Send it. I don't even think twice. So I thank you for your service, and I move on with myself.
So I think, yeah, I did my first desk pop. That's a real thing, right? I think, Mike, though, let me just give you, I think this comes down to actually, I would say probably the way that the majority of leagues work that I've seen and the way that I think people work in general when they start playing the game. The 101 is typically easier to split right? So if you think about it, like in the majority of markets, I can take now this 101 and probably get 2 receivers in tier 3 for me at any time.
Yes.
In most leagues, right? Now, so that's why I say that.
One of them. Yeah.
And that I will say, though, the reason it's like a 90% smash for me. If it's any type of normal market, that's what I'm doing. Conversely, though, if I know my market's a little bit odd and that people are sharper as far as splitting assets, we're talking probably a best ball league here, and we're talking about like a lot of people that down tier. Mike, because here's the conversely. If I told you right now this 101 is Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, what do you say?
No, I still want the 101.
Okay, but I'm just telling you in value right now, you're talking about a 212 and a 301 type startup. Like that's best ball, man. You know you and I are going to take that in a market that's that way. So my point.
I know I just went through this whole thing too. Like this is a phase I'm like transitioning, but like there is some. Okay, I'm going to assume the 101 is going to be a quarterback, whether it's Caleb or Jaden Daniels, right? Those are the only two right now in the conversation for me.
Yeah.
Especially Jaden Daniels with this late rise and like how people feel about him if he gets a draft capital. We've covered it numerous amounts, especially with D-Bro last week. But let me say this. It's going to be a quarterback. Quarterback scoring was down last year. We looked at zone coverages and all this stuff. I still got this little tingling feeling in the back of my fucking head that goes, hey, Mike, what if it regresses back to the norm? All right, what if we're back to 2020 type quarterback scoring? And Adam, just about any startup I'm in, if you told me I could trade my second, third to get into the possibility of a top 8 dynasty quarterback off the fucking rip from the day that they're a rookie, I'm still doing it.
Sure.
Still doing it.
Now, but again, that's why I say in this specific market, because in this market though, Mike, now what you're probably going to do is you're going to draft Caleb Williams, and you're going to end up maybe having to not be able to down tier, and you're going to have to hold and hope that we see him play well, and then you can split that asset. Because if he doesn't, now you're looking at a ticking time bomb the other way. I'm not saying he's going to be Bryce Young, for the record, but I'm just saying you can use a guy like Bryce. You don't have to get to that extreme, but where the value can go down when you have a player asset, right? My point is, in certain markets, I could see what you're doing. Personally, for me, these guys both don't project the alphaness, though, right? Like, if you told me these two guys that I think I could see that alpha giant seismic rise, I'd probably be a little more apt to do that, right? But I'm talking about Addison in the Jefferson offense, and as much as I do like JSN, like DK's still there. We still don't know the quarterback situation. I could get behind this, I think, on the 2-for-1 in a certain market if I was looking at different assets. But I'm making the case for that one specific type of league format type, right, in economy. 90% of the time you can take the other side, and at the 101, if you decide you want to get out, you can get this type of an offer whenever you want. That's why I wanted to go through that.
So I'll throw out two guys. If this was changed to two different wide receivers within the same tier, kind of in the same realm of startup ADP, don't shoot me if they're not perfect. But I think guys, both you and I and Brand would agree, like if you were just to look at them on the surface compared to an Addison or a JSN, not that they're bad, but we kind of know where they're at, right? Just kind of betas right now in the offense. Not that beta's a bad thing, but if you were looking at the holy shit, like possibility of Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, etc., A.J. Brown, especially early part of the season, like Tyreek Hill, that level of production, because you're the clear-cut number fucking one and we're going to funnel you 180, 190 targets, something in the absurdity level. If I told you that was T. Higgins and Drake London, would you be more apt to it? Like, T. Higgins could end up in a new situation as that kind of alpha. Drake London with a quarterback upgrade all of a sudden could be that fucking alpha.
Right.
They're not necessarily betas within their thing. And if that was like more of the type of receiver, would you be more open to this?
Yeah, that's why I said, like, this is where in tier 3 I know what the bets I'm making are, and that, like, again, that's why I said Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. Like, I've seen the targets and a little bit of target bump, that's staying right there, a little bit of quarterbacks. Like, I could see that being the case. So, in theory, I think I kind of talked it out. But, yeah, if you told me that these are two guys that project to be the alpha in their offense and I could see that rise up, I might be willing to shoot my shot on that reward. But overall, I'd probably not. I'd probably take the 101 here more often than not.
I like it, too. Because
the last thing,
would you trade it for this? And I'm like, fuck yeah, Wyatt, hit the button. Let's go.
Yep.
Hit it yesterday.
Right. Go ahead.
I just think I think we'd have to get up to a certain tier, but I think that there are leagues. So if you had Addison with an Adam Thielen, kind of start where you're like, man, I've seen what the number 2 in this offense does. JSN pops off. They get Kirk Cousins. Any of these things happen to either player. Right? I think both are pretty insulated at that. I mean,
sure.
They both have names. They're young. They're on good offenses to some degree. Like, what are the chances that either of these guys aren't worth 106, mid 25 first, right? Either of these guys really pops off or both. I could probably move either for 225 first. We see Addison step up. He gets 2 games in a row, double-digit targets. He's 8 for 90 and 1, 8 for 115 and 2. How many players are off the board in most leagues? And now some leagues are sharper than others, but in how many leagues, if I come up and I'm like, Mike, I got JSN and 225 first, how many people are off the board? Like, in most leagues, you're going to be able to get almost anyone, right?
Yep.
Like, if you're in a 112, or a 12-team super flex, are all, not all 12 of those guys are off. The 101's probably pick 8, 9, 10 maybe.
Yep.
225 first in JSN, that might bump me up a couple of spots, right? They both hit, and you get into 4 first. So that's what I'm getting at. That again, if my team is wrecked and I'm having to split and make some bets, I can see the idea of, hey, I need 2 wide receivers with some name cachet, so they're insulated. Where worst case, I would say worst case in October, you ended up trading the 101 for 225 mid first, right? It's not great, but that's the level of protection. But if I get 1 hit or 2 hits, then I end up being at 225 first, and the other gets me most players. Maybe even somebody slumping on Jalen Hurts, right? I'm a little held back. Maybe not Kellen Moore. Maybe in September you get some bad press. Hey, I got 225 first in JSN for you. Like, that's where the opening gets for. So I think if the team is devoid of assets, maybe not these 2, but the idea of, hey, I want 2 guys with name cachet that might turn into 2 first apiece. But I think in most leagues, especially if I'm going to play with you 2 guys, now I want the 101. Yeah,
and I think too, to the point, right? This is one of the things where just like the psychology of my league mates. So in a scenario where, let's say this was, we're spitballing back and forth, and this is kind of the deal that he wants to settle on with me or she. You want 101 right now, right? Or so if I'm gonna I know that if I'm gonna do this and I'm getting off of this 101, and you're willing to give me these 2 guys right now, I have a feeling, I got a gut feeling that 90% of people or more, they'd be willing to kick in a little something extra if they're already here. And that's where I think another thing to think about is the 101 specifically. Like, I would much rather take 101 and go to 103 and let you pick the stuff ahead if I'm getting the pluses, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, the 101, I can guarantee you this: when people can pick their whole slew, their pick of the litter, right? In this class, as the hype continues to build, I promise it's not going down in value. That I can guarantee. So if this deal's on the table and you're getting off of 101, I'm probably going to make them sit on this offer for about a month and wait till that little plus comes in, and then maybe I'll do that, right, in this type of thing. I think you can probably understand how the class is just so juiced up this year to where if I'm coming off of an asset like 101, I'm going to make you just think about it and maybe try to kick something else in too. Because I agree with the concept of splitting hands here, though. All right, let's see what we got.
Mid 2, pick up running back 3, pick up Mitchell, some speedster who hits a 3 for 125 opener, and someone thinks he's the next dude. Yeah,
someone, what was the last question? Someone's talking about, Jake Ferguson. All right, go ahead and kick me in this little Jake Ferguson piece. Boom, now we're cooking. Just something like that, an additional plus, and now we're cooking, I think. All right.
He hit him with the ATM.
See, there you go. Year 2 QBs gonna fix the curve.
I hope so.
We all can. One can only hope. All right, we had a couple questions I actually totally forgot to get to from the beginning. That's bad. All right, 12-team Superflex. Start 9. Full PPR, no tight end premium. 4 points for the passing touchdown, -1 for the pick. All right, so we got Hurts, D. Watts. Never heard him called that before. I love this. Deshaun Watson. Higgins, Laporta, 101. The 101, 2, 3, 5. Wow. Figure I'm going to end up adding top 2 quarterbacks with the draft. Would you sell any of these quarterbacks for less than fair value to get rid of excess? Interesting. All right, so let's think this out. You got Hurts and Watson. So you have 2 quarterbacks. One you're not feeling the greatest about in Watson, but there's your hope for a bounce back. So 101, 102, 103. I mean, 105. Damn. Now,
I
but I mean,
I want to sell.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah, go ahead. What do you got?
I want to sell the 101.
I was just gonna say because Caleb is probably netting like, or just the idea of the 101 again. If they don't want to take Caleb, they can do what they want with it. But what we just talked about, it nets a huge haul back. Hertz is actually kind of like in a weird way value depressed right now, so I'm not selling him. Watson is probably the worst sell in the history of the world right now. Like, this is just nobody wants him, and they're not going to get anything out of him. If I was going to sell one of the other picks, I'd have to know that, you know, I think you're probably right, man. 101. This is one I'd prefer to sell if I had all things equal.
Yep. Let them make the decision for me there.
Yeah.
101, and then I know what I'm doing at 2 and 3.
Now,
worst case scenario, I'm adding, Marv and Daniels, right? Or best case scenario, I'm adding Caleb Williams and Marv.
Well, I was just going to say,
or they take Caleb's at one.
I'll take Daniels over Caleb.
Yeah, I think can I tell you, I'll actually say this, by the way. Right now, let's reverse engineer this question, and I think if you look at it through a different lens, you'll feel a lot better about moving off the 101 or really any of these picks. So you start off with, I figure I'm going to take 2 quarterbacks with the draft, 2 top 2 quarterbacks. Like, I remove that from your skull for a little bit. Just like let that be what it might be down the road. You already have Hurts. You already have a top 5, 6 quarterback. I have Watson, who's a minimum a good quarterback 3. So right now, I really, in necessity, if I actually was to hold all these picks and draft them, I really only need to take 1, right? You don't necessarily need to take 2. Now, I'm not saying that you couldn't take all of them and try to trade them down the road, but see, you're asking the question of, like, would you sell these quarterbacks? You're looking at these picks as QBs already. Like, I'm looking at it more as picks, and I'll let you buy the 101, and then you can take your flavor, and I'll take wide receivers if I have to. I know with all these picks here, I can kind of carve out whatever the value is. So I would say kind of conceptually, don't think about yourself as having 4 quarterbacks yet. Think about yourself as having a high-end quarterback asset, a safe quarterback 3, and that gives you the flexibility to do pretty much whatever the fuck you want with all these picks. That's the way I would view it.
If I was going to do this, I'd sell the 1. Some possible things I would look for. Who's got pick 4? Can I get pick 4 and their second?
There you go.
If I can't get that done, right? If I can't get that trade back, because I already have 2 and 3. Now all of a sudden I'm getting 2, 3, 4, and 5.
The draft pick tier down. Look at this. I love it.
I really control the shit out of this draft now. But I want that second. Like, that's the tax, the plus. I need your 204 as well. Or a 25 second too. Like a 25 second and 25 third, whatever. Just start hoarding a little bit of assets. Pick 6 or 7. Like, I don't mind going there. 8, we talked about that. Also could be included in the tier. But, like, that is where I get pick 6, a 25 first, and then I still need another piece on top of it. Like, I still need maybe your 25 second, or I need a good second and a third in this class. Something along those lines. That's the kind of, like, low sell that I'm doing. But it's going to be for 2 first and a plus. That's what I'm selling the 101 for. Realistically, I think there's a lot of people out there, depending on your league, though, that might get stupid enough to give you 3 firsts worth of value for the 101. And if anybody gives you 3 firsts worth of value for the 101, you just say yes and move on.
And that's what WaLLrus was basically getting at, why you want to sell the 101. We're on the same page here. I think now the one thing while I was telling you to kind of think about these as picks, if I'm going now and I'm looking to, I would not typically really suggest shopping out the 101, like sending a bunch of offers right now. I'm kind of like a little more passively shopping it. Like, I don't want to seem like I'm desperate to get rid of the 101 and kind of give away a little bit of hint of leverage. But I would say is I'm looking to the quarterback point. If I can see some teams in my league that are a little bit quarterback needy and they're thinking they got a chance to come get Caleb, I'm probably looking at some of those teams specifically to see how can I carve out that 3 first in value for you to come get the 101. Now your life is so much easier. You've already basically extracted the value you needed out of Caleb, and you found your buyer.
Love it.
So, all right. Now I'm gonna go ahead and take control of the Blazer. Right.
Let's go, man. I just saw that thing. Let's go.
So, McNutted, report, buddy. I don't want you parsed over there while I'm spitting game. Okay.
Pour up, baby. Come on.
Good. All right. So if we're gonna, again, talking about the value side here, To me, 101 and 103 are the same thing. I'm going to value them roughly the same. So if I'm in this spot here, I'm not going to shop the 101 because I don't want to take the luster off my prettiest piece, right? That's the girl in the red dress. Don't talk about her. She's fine. Don't worry about her. I'm going to go shop the 103. And then when I finally find the right mark who's going to give the deal, I'm going to lean in, whisper something sweet, and be like, all right.
What if I let you get her?
But for the girl in the red dress, I'll take the iron price. Now it's the extra first. It's kicking an Addison. It's whatever the pieces I need on top of the 103 because I don't care which of the 2 or 3 I get. So don't take the luster off the 101. She's fine. Don't worry about her. Take the 103. Go shop that thing around. When you find your right price, you haven't seemed desperate. Maybe someone else wants to come shop the 101. When you get the right price, that's when you slide in the 101. All right, cool. How much for the 101 though?
There's a little game theory psychology that I love to see. Like, yeah, you put that 103 on the block, right? Well, yeah, of course you want to sell the fucking 103, right? You kind of get established rapport there. Chick. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Do the kids, they call that rizzing?
Oh, that's Riz, man. That's Riz, man.
Is that what
that's
that
Texas Riz right there, man.
That's Riz? No cap?
No, that's actually
stop the cap.
Smart, man. That's smart.
That's bussin', right?
Come on, man. Oh, shit.
He definitely ain't an op, bro.
Honestly, that's a witty listen, man, that's just spitting like real to the people. All right, 12-team Superflex, half tight and premium. What would you need on top of Garrett Wilson to down tier from Amon-Ra?
First. Not just any first though. I don't want the fucking 112, 111.
I think I would take any first. But it's got to be a first. I'm not taking anything less. Like, I'm not gonna let you nickel and dime me here, right? Now, if you give me a first, it's a first. Okay, I can do that. Now, but I'm not doing it for anything less because what I know out of Amon-Ra is that all the stuff that I've seen and all this upside, this like, you know, if we could say that it's like a card, right? But you haven't graded it. Like we're kind of hoping that this gem mint is what this card's going to become with Garrett Wilson. Now, Amon-Ra's not graded like a gem mint, but I know that it basically is a fucking gem mint already. Like I'm basically getting off of that here to go get this upside piece. You got to pay me a full first because I don't want to have the risk of, you know, what if Garrett Wilson gets all these targets and the quality's shitty? What if the targets come down and his efficiency goes up a little bit, but it's almost an even trade? I know right now with Amon-Ra, no matter what the situation is with weapons, whether it's Hawk there, not there, Laporta, Gibbs, it doesn't matter. Dude is a certified fucking stud that's very close to Chase. So you got to give me a full first. I'll take 111, 112, whatever, but it's got to be a first. If it's anything less than that or a player that I don't feel can actually be liquidated pretty easily for a first, I'm not doing it. Where are you at? WaLLrus might be a little bit more aggressive. Let's see it.
I actually think that these two players are symptomatic of something we see in the league that we haven't 100% caught up with yet. And that's, like we would say wide receiver ones. What do we mean by wide receiver one, right? We don't just mean the wide receiver one on their team because we don't even give a shit about the wide receiver one on most teams, right?
Yeah.
When we say a wide receiver one, like when we're talking about like an archetype, what we mean is a cat who can go beat press man coverage one-on-one. I don't really care anymore. No one runs that shit. Like, this is the era of cover six, split field reads, everything's in exotic zone coverage. I don't need that guy anymore. You want to know how I can prove it? Because some dude named Puka from Hawaii just burned this shit down. Like,
yeah.
I don't need the DK Metcalf, right? They don't do this, all right, go over on Revis Island, and I'm going to put my best guy against your best guy, and I'm going to throw the fade. That's not the game anymore. Like, we're seeing old man Kelsey, you know, when he's not talking to Taylor, he's over here catching 15 passes a game, right? Like, he's taking the soft spot in the zones. The game's evolved a bit, right? So where I think that we have this, and I'm not saying the guy who can go beat press man is, like, not valuable, but they're not the dude anymore. Like, you don't have to have that, right? Rashee Rice is not going to go out there and do, you know, the Chiefs like to do the 4x1, right? They're not going to go 4x1, stick Rashee Rice and be like, all right, who you got to cover Rashee? Like, that's not how the game evolves anymore, right? They're just going to take easier plays.
Yep.
So, to me, a bit of this here is Amon-Ra still feels like the number 2, but they're not anymore. And Garrett Wilson still feels like the guy that your dad would go, that boy there, he's a wide receiver. Put him up on him. Let's do this. So we still overvalue this can they beat press man? And I'm not trying to say that that's not important, but we overvalue it on the spread. The reason that people don't think that Amon-Ra is not a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson, is because no one thinks that Amon-Ra can go line up on the outside one-on-one and win a bunch of man press rounds. That's it.
Yeah,
what
honestly,
you can do is give me 150 targets, baby. I'll take them.
Yeah, to that point, that's a really good point, honestly, because like Amon-Ra, it feels like he's going to be kind of judged on that for the rest of the time. The fact that he didn't have the draft capital because the GMs thought the same thing. And to your point, it doesn't like it. The game is not going to be played in a vacuum anytime, probably in Amon-Ra's future, realistically, where like that is going to be the reason that he's successful. We already have seen success from him that comes from otherwise, and we don't need that now. If you want to tell me that because Garrett Wilson's a better route runner versus man and like his theoretical upside is wide receiver 1 overall or something, sure, but what are the odds of that hitting? It's pretty fine. It's pretty small, man. So it's just not worth the payoff.
Point, how many times has Jamar Chase finished as the wide receiver 1?
He hasn't yet.
Then why would I want to bet on Garrett Wilson doing it? He ain't Jamar Chase. So
Right.
I don't want that bet.
Right.
Y'all go bet on it. Y'all go bet to the wide receiver 1. Me, I'm going to take Amon-Ra. So, so I just think that spread there, that's what I'm looking for, right? We see a lot of this, right? Like it's the reason that DK, the difference in DK and Rashee Rice right now, besides a few other things, is that people still think that DK can come be the guy who can be wide receiver 1, beat man press, and look great with his shirt off. That's the difference in those two players right now from a value perspective. We're still overvaluing the guy who can go stand over there with one other guy in a place that doesn't really happen anymore. Of course, it's still valuable. It's not that simple, but we're overvaluing that part of the game that doesn't exist. Zone goes up every single year. Split field reads go up every single year. A-dots come down on all the great players, on all these great quarterbacks, every single year of the last spread, right? That's part of the QB scoring depression that we've seen, right? So, to me, like, I'm with Mike. Like, it's not just a piece. I want a piece next to it. Like, I'm not just going to be like, all right, I'll take a second. I'll take some contenders 25 first and hopefully I hit something rare. Like, no, man. Amon-Ra produces right now. I don't care how he does it. He makes 150 targets and he scores points right now.
I'll tell you where for me. Now, I get to the point, for the record, like, I'm not taking a second. I'm not going to let you nickel and dime me. But one of the things I still will – the reason I'll say I'll take pretty much any first is because it's just this thing of it's like it's an injury risk. It's an insurance policy. Like, either one of these guys hits – for example, I know Amon-Ra St. Brown right now is more likely to finish higher. They're basically the same fucking age. And people that want to project Garrett Wilson could pass Amon-Ra, I mean, maybe, but by how much? Like, it's very, very – he doesn't have very much room to go ahead of him. Amon-Ra's already proven it. So, for that, though, the reason I'll take it is if there was an injury to Amon-Ra, I don't have anything now. I have an asset that probably is going to come down. And because of all the points you just made, one of the things I do think about with that type of stuff is community perception. We have seen with Justin Jefferson, when he's hurt, there's no value loss. With Jamar Chase, there's no value loss. You know what I'd be willing to put a little bit of a bet on, a little ticket on, is Amon-Ra St. Brown would come down further than he fucking should if he got a big injury because people still view that same fucking concept. So I have a hurt asset that's probably going to take a little bit of a knock where I have the extra first that if Garrett Wilson could finish close to Amon-Ra right now in points per game, it definitely could happen. It's not what I project, but it could happen. And now I have this first to push in season if they're both healthy, but I have an extra piece. I think more often than not, if I'm taking those extra firsts like that with liquidity, it's just a bet that's going to pay off over time. But I get your point. You don't want to you don't want to just let someone get this for no fucking piece that doesn't matter. But when I talk a first round pick, that's a big piece in Superflex leagues for me. 2
points here. So I'm pretty locked into like it has to be a good first in 24 or like a decently outlooked one in 25, right? I don't want the 110, 111, 112. The better move that I like to do is because I have such a huge tier that Garrett Wilson's in, like we talked about earlier. I want 2 receivers out of that tier, right? So I want Garrett Wilson as one and then give me one of the other ones. Now, the reasoning behind it is if I just told you on the surface I can get Garrett Wilson and let's say the 109.
Okay. Now, I'm just curious. You're saying like Tank Dell. I'm just trying to get a name. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So if I could say I could get Garrett Wilson and like the 109 at him, right? I could do that on the surface. Or the better, like the way I'm thinking about it, let's say I get Garrett Wilson and Tank Dell, for example, right? Not the 109, but I get Tank Dell. Now I take Garrett Wilson, and I can trade Garrett Wilson for another receiver in that same tier and get a first on it, right? Because I can guarantee I could go out and probably trade a Garrett Wilson for a Deebo Samuel in a first. I can go out and trade Garrett Wilson for Mike Evans in a first. I can go out and trade, if you wanted to stay young, like maybe Garrett Wilson for Nico Collins in a first. Jaden Reed, Jordan Addison, JSN, Drake London, like one of these guys. I'm going to find somebody who values Garrett Wilson that much more than one of those youthful wide receivers and just get a generic first tapped on. Now I'm walking away with a Tank Dell, let's say a Drake London, and a future first. Like, what the fuck? I'll take that over right now than just Garrett Wilson in the 109. You know what I mean?
Well, but what's
like,
the difference?
Kind of what's the
difference? I can still down tier Garrett Wilson at some point for that, and the 109 can still buy me a Tank Dell.
You still could, but you get that extra piece already where you don't have to make that fucking differentiate, because a lot of people just want to go, oh, it's a first. I don't want to fucking send that. If it's two players, they might not like them as much where they go, oh, I'm really up tiering WaLLrus St. Brown. Like a little bit of psychology in there. You start throwing firsts or like 108s, 109s into deals, people go, oh, I value this because it's going to be this, yada, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. You got to hear their fucking song and dance. All of a sudden, if it's like one of these wide receivers where they're like, okay, well, this is like two guys I don't value near as much as Amon-Ra, fuck yeah, I'll give you both of them. Easily.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just depends on the league mate. I think there's plenty of people that would rather have – I know plenty of people will send right now, I bet you Keep Trade Cuts reflective of this. You could probably find trades on the lab where they'd rather have – they would send their 108 right now, 109 for all these type guys. Rashee Rice, Tank Dell. I think that's totally subject to the person. So to me, I think we're actually though. I think what you're saying right now really is speaking to why I want that first, because Garrett Wilson still is a tier down candidate, and I know that people, even though he's tier 3 for me, I can probably get Pittman in a first. I can get Nico in a first. These guys. And then I have now 2 first to go back by. You know what 2 first can go do? Buy fucking Amon-Ra sometimes. Buy a guy like that. So that's where, like, to me, well, I think we're speaking the same language, actually. I think we're speaking from a lot of the same principles.
I think the other thing with Garrett Wilson, too, that to me is part of the reason I'm not as big on it. So there's obviously the just, why he's valued currently where he is, where I think a lot of that's still projection, still, oh, well, that's the dude, right? Like, that's still, I think a lot of his value is, oh, well, Garrett Wilson's a dude. Like, it almost is that simple, right? The other part is, if you do down tier and you say take like London and Addison or any of these other 2 cats, right? So let's take London. Let's say that London finishes as a wide receiver 8, wide receiver 11, has a bang up season. They get Kirk, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say that he finishes 1 or 2 spots behind Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson finishes as the finishes the wide receiver 6, wide receiver 7. London finishes at 8 or 9, right? London's going to repeat. Garrett Wilson's going to have a new quarterback. So, to me, even Garrett Wilson's production, even if he is the dude, I mean, unless he puts up a top 3, I mean, obviously, again, he does have the talent, right? Like, there's still a world where he's that guy. But, again, I want other people betting on who's the wide receiver 1 through 3. That's not my game. But to me, if you take a Garrett Wilson versus any of these other guys in that same tier, right, all of those guys, to me, have the chance of having that repeatable value. Garrett Wilson finishes as the top tier guy. He's ranked wide receiver 6 now. Where are you going to put him? You're going to rank him over AJ, CD, Chase, Jefferson. Like, to me, he's not going to move up, right? Like, even if he finishes as wide receiver 14 with Aaron Rodgers, wide receiver 16 with Aaron Rodgers, it's a good season. Maybe he only scores 6 touchdowns. Maybe he only gets 130 targets and is really efficient. Then he moves back a couple of spots. So I guess what I'm getting at is I'm going to get off Garrett Wilson in a variety of ways. So I think we could take the down tier here in a couple of ways, but in that tier, there's probably 7 or 8 guys I'd rather bet on if I have to hold them for 18 months, or if I'm thinking about buy and sell windows between now and the end of next season.
That's true. I guess too. Like, I'll just give you some here, and you guys let me know what think about, because Mike, you were using the analogy essentially like now all of a sudden I got 3 pretty solid assets you feel good about, right? Like,
yeah.
Let's use the lab real quick. I'll just give you a couple to kind of work through actually real time. You could say, and then we can say, do we want which side of these 3 assets? Okay, so let's say this is a 109, a 110, right? We're kind of split on. Let's say it was, what was that, 110?
Yeah, 109. I think I'd be in.
109.
110.
Okay, let's say 110, where you guys are a little more iffy on. All right, so let's say right now you get Garrett Wilson in the 110, but then you're going to move Garrett Wilson for Rashee Rice, the 108, and the 212. So now all of a sudden it's Rashee Rice, the 108, the 110, and the 212.
Fucking A.
Because here's the thing, actually. Because can I make this full circle? I'm going to tell you what's almost crazy, and I could guarantee the lab's reflective of this, which is one of these things where, Mike, we started talking about where ADP and values. I can almost bet you that the majority of trades, Garrett Wilson still gets more of a haul because of what the fuck WaLLrus was saying that people still project. So, like, I'm just
love him that much.
Yeah. So, all right, now, what if I can now trade Garrett Wilson for the 105 and a 25 first? So now I got a chance at now it's 105, 110, and a 25 first. I just made Amon-Ra St. Brown a top 5 pick, another first this year, and a first in 25. Like, that's, I guess, why I'm saying is because I know that Garrett Wilson still almost trades like Amon-Ra St. Brown or better. I mean, I can keep going, but it's that's kind of the point. I think I can probably make a way to make that 3-for-1 trade out of this. By the way, Scribbles, man, that was some real rapping right there on that question. That was fun.
I got a little pushback a few AMAs ago. Like, we put out a short about it, about how people still, just in the back of their mind, fucking don't value Amon-Ra St. Brown like you used to, like to your point, Brand. Or not like they used to, but like they should. Okay.
Yeah.
The fact that he was a 5th-round pick, nobody should give a fuck anymore, right? It's done. This guy is in the conversation with Jefferson and Chase, period. But they still don't. Right? They still don't. And people are like, well, that's bullshit because once upon a time Antonio Brown was the best receiver in all of football for multiple years. So I had to go back and look at it, and I could play redraft ADP with Antonio Brown's season. Did you know Antonio Brown had a fucking 1,600 yard and like 12 touchdown or 13 touchdown fucking season, and he was still like wide receiver 6 or 7 off the fucking board, right?
Central Michigan, man.
It wasn't until he had like 120 fucking catches and 1,800 yards and 15 fucking touchdowns, and by far and away the wide receiver 1, before the following fucking season anybody went, oh yeah, I think this guy's pretty good. We should probably draft him, the first round of our redraft fucking drafts. Like, that stink does stay on you, and you got to perform to a level that is like almost absurd for people to go, fuck, all right. Puka Nacua is a prime example. He did shit that we'd never seen from fucking rookie wide receiver from a production standpoint. And it took that for him to go up. Because up until, week 12, 13, we're still having these conversations. Well, Cooper Kupp's still getting acclimated back to the offense. And we've seen some bad games from Puka and yada, yada, yada. Then he goes on, has a fucking massive playoff game, and all of a sudden you look up and it's like, okay, now he's properly ranked probably in the top 6, top 5 of dynasty wide receivers coming in. If Puka Nacua comes out and smashes again next year, then we're going to have the same conversation. But you got to be like historic levels of fucking good before that stink really wears off of you. Doesn't really matter that Amon-Ra's been fucking better than Jamar Chase over the last couple of years. People still look at him and go, 5th rounder.
Yep.
Slot guy. Short, slow, whatever the fuck you want to throw into it. That's what they're going to keep peddling that bullshit. But if he comes out and he puts 1,800 up with 15 touchdowns, all of a sudden people will shut the fuck up and be like, Amon-Ra or Jefferson, who do I take?
Go ahead. What do you got?
There's another piece of this to touch on a little of the economics market side. The two things that people invest in the most, normal people, are the two most opposite things that exist. 401k and lottery tickets. How come? Because people value certainty and they value the what if.
Right.
If I told you could turn $1 into $100, no one really cares. It's a 100x return. But if I said, hey, you know what? I promise you can turn $10 into 12, people are interested. If I tell you can turn $1 into $1 million, oh my God, I could be a millionaire. People overvalue the extremes of the edge, and they misvalue the representation in the middle, right? Amon-Ra's in the middle. He's never going to be Antonio Brown and have 1,800 and 16 touchdowns. He's never going to break fantasy. He's never going to be Cooper Kupp. And he does have some certainty, but he doesn't have that like built-in aesthetic, right? So people will value.
He's a 401k. You could depend on him. You know he's going to be there if you keep contributing to it. You know if he's healthy, he's going to be there, but he doesn't have change my life. I'm just going to retire.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Well, I would even say that lightly, he's almost not 401k in some ways. Ah, dude, he's small. He's a slot. He's a 5th round pick. So he doesn't have the certainty, right? DK Metcalf feels like certainty. DK Metcalf to me is almost the 401k. They're like, oh, dude, he's a big, strong, tall guy. He's always going to have a good season.
Right.
Like, so we could value it differently. But people will pull to the extremes. They'll overvalue overpriced certainty, and they'll overvalue over accentuated upside regardless of odds. So they'll take the lottery even though they know they're better off getting hit by lightning 3 times, and they'll take the 401k even when there's a better bet to be made. Amon-Ra, he's not attractive.
Lance, by the way, you called me on it. I did misspeak. I don't know why I said 5th. He's a 4th.
I said 5th.
Did you say? Okay. Mike's drinking bourbon. I'm just saying shit at this point.
I'm fine.
I trusted the 2 fantasy experts. This isn't even my thing. I'm on here with some legends. I just trusted these guys.
Well, here's the thing. I know for sure. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but Amon-Ra knows every single person drafted ahead of him. It's pretty cool if you ever seen the documentary about.
That is a cool piece.
Yeah. All right.
I get it mixed up with my other favorite, shit on person. And that was Sam Howell. He was a 5th.
That's true. He
Don't
was
tell
5th.
me otherwise.
Okay. Jake says 12-team Superflex PPR start 9 no tight end premium. I've got the 106. I'm sorry. He got the 106 for the 111, the 207, and Chuba Hubbard W. I also have the 102. Likely get. Yeah, I'm in. I'm in on this.
So we got the 6 for the 11.
So he went from the 111, the 207,
yes.
and hey, how about this now? What if that 110 and Garrett Wilson? I can attach my 207 and Chuba Hubbard to it. Now all of a sudden I got Garrett Wilson in the 106.
Yeah.
Damn it! I like the way you do business.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was gonna say earlier. It's just we're doing like fucking random quotes out of here. Bran out here talking too. I'm just sitting here like fucking Snoop Dogg in that meme. Like this motherfucker don't miss.
Motherfucker, there you go. This motherfucker don't miss.
Fucking don't miss.
Hey, I gotta get some like that. Would be a nice sounder to have, right? Like I gotta get a couple of little sounders for AMA in the future.
Need it.
The soundboard.
In my vein.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah, man. Mike. Mike drinking bourbon, man. You get some gems out of him. This is a smash in my opinion. First of all, we're starting 9, right? So, the consolidation piece here is the market typically in a start 9, everybody is fiending to go buy up. So this feels extremely cheap. Now, we could look back at this and the 111 could pop, the 207 could pop, and Chuba Hubbard could still be, getting a workhorse role like he was the second half of the year, but I don't have that type of crystal ball. I'm taking what I know about my shit today, and that's 106 can land you a quarterback possibly, or a really fucking good receiver, or Brock Bowers.
I think I got like a show going on with WaLLrus here too, right? Because he's got some killer analogies tonight.
Yeah, he does.
It was just the other day in Discord. I was comparing like football players to food, like pizza toppings. So I said Brock Purdy's like Canadian bacon. Idiots love him. They think it's real bacon, but it's not. It's actually just fucking ham. It's a poser. It's mid.
We're getting exposed out here, man.
It's like I think we could have an entire show where WaLLrus gives financial analogies, and I'm just out here comparing them to food because I'm a fat fuck.
Yeah. The Canadian bacon. Hold on. So we got what was the one here? There was a question. Damn it, my bad. You guys keep talking. Keep yapping. Oh, you're fine. Oh, what are some potential landing spots that would make you fade some of the top rookies in this class? So I mean, let me just ask you guys what your thoughts are on this. Like the first and easiest one that we've seen as a potential is if New England doesn't actually invest in the quarterback, right, with this early pick, or they don't trade back or whatever, and they take Marv. So, like off the rip, what does that do for you guys for Marv, if anything?
Oh, I'm fucking gassed up for Mac Jones, baby. Let's fucking ride. I knew it.
I know Mike wants that. I know Mike wants that to happen.
Some of this good whiskey in honor of who we thought, and Marvin Harrison could be. It'd be a sad day.
Oh, what if Marv is the where Garrett Wilson is right now? Could y'all imagine?
I wouldn't care.
Oh well, I'm saying a lot of sad people out there. I know you probably personally wouldn't.
I'd embrace it.
Okay, what else? Are there any? Let me pull up the draft real quick.
The best way for me to answer it, doing these mock draft shows every Monday night that we're doing.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah,
Fizzle and Koopa. some people have a lot of concerns, right? I've seen it in the chat. I've seen it. We've had the discussion on the panel while we're doing it. It's weird to call it a fucking panel. Just hanging with my dudes, but whatever. I don't have too much concerns right now, like, because by the time the draft happens, free agency has already gone on, right? Like, we've had free agency, so I know where it does. Now, if we get to the NFL draft and I already know what free agency has gone on or not gone on in free agency, yes, then it will concern me. So a good situation is like the Patriots take a quarterback, okay? They take Drake May, let's say, just hypothetically, okay?
Yep.
They don't do anything in free agency to address the fact that they have absolutely no fucking weapons whatsoever, right? They got
Demario Douglas, wide receiver 1 still, yeah.
They got a Pop Douglas and they got like a fucking Hunter Henry.
Maybe hoping Kendrick Bourne comes back from ACL, you know?
They go to the draft, they draft Drake May, they don't do anything in the second round, third round to bring in wide receiver weapons for this guy.
Okay.
I love Drake May, but I'd be like, nah, I'm good.
That's fair.
Like, this is a fucked up situation for him. Like, this is a tough one for him to, like, evolve and progress. Like, he's going to have a lot on his shoulders with not a lot of help. Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Patriots, you brought that up. Now, that one doesn't really concern me because I still think Mac Jones is a decent enough quarterback. He's had some shitty moments, okay? Don't let me be out here like, oh, yeah, I fucking traded first for Mac Jones. No. But I just talked about the fact that I would panic on a prospect like fucking Drake May if he went to that situation too. I don't care who the fuck you put in there. Patrick Mahomes couldn't even fix that shit. He's a goddamn GOAT, right? If his best weapon's Hunter Henry and Pop Douglas, I'm sorry. R.I.P. Pat. You're going to struggle. That offensive line was also bad.
So New England in general is the answer, right?
Caleb to, like, the Commanders. Or just insert any quarterback in there. If the Commanders don't fucking do something with that offensive line, they got Sam Howell killed and fucking murdered last year. So they need to address it. I don't want to see a rookie quarterback, whether it's Caleb or Drake May or Jaden Daniels. Heaven forbid it's J.J. McCarthy. The fucking world would start on fire. But one of those situations, I don't want to see a rookie quarterback behind that offensive line as currently constructed. So those are just a few, like, right off the top that I go, okay, pause. Like, these landing spots, especially for quarterbacks, would make me question how I evaluate these prospects. Kind of similar to what we saw with Carolina with Bryce Young. Now, I was 50-50 last year, Adam, because when the draft happened, I said I didn't want Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud, right? I didn't like the weapons in Houston. I didn't like the fucking weapons or situation in Carolina. Now, one of the quarterbacks took all the weapons and was like, all right, Nico Collins, you're going to be a fucking thing, right? Third round Tank Dell, you're going to be a fucking thing. Dalton Schultz, I know we thought you were just a product of the Cowboys system. You're going to be a fucking thing here. And that offensive line played pretty well. And Devin Singletary had moments at running back. And DeMeco Ryans had that fucking team humming. So it's still, at the end of the day, even if I fucking hated both of them, where I said, like, their situations suck and I don't see it, like, really improving, there's still a chance we're wrong about that. And all of a sudden this, whoever the hell goes there, elevates the situation. So when I say landing spot, it matters. But in reality, the more and more I fucking do this, the more and more I'm like, I don't really give a shit about landing spot, right? We've seen in the past A.J. Brown going to Tennessee, and we're like, it's terrible. Marcus Mariota is his quarterback, and all of a sudden we're like, fuck, A.J. Brown's really good. This didn't matter.
Can I'm with you. Go ahead, WaLLrus, if you had any thoughts. I have one that's, I think, a little people haven't really thought out, but go ahead.
So yeah, I pretty much resonate with something. I think, again, it comes back to Are we talking from an NFL standpoint, or are we talking about playing our game, right? From our game, to me, landing spot is about value insulation, right? So the ones that make a difference to me is really going to be where Neighbors and Adunze go. If, like, for the exact example, right? Like, so Bryce Young, you can still sell Bryce Young for a first, right? That was as bad as it gets. He's still a young quarterback. People still have some upside. You can still find someone in the league will pay you a first, right? Like, that's worst case on them. So if you take, there you go. I got my guy, right? So if we look at Daniels or Drake May, I would say that Daniels is pretty value insulated because of the rushing, right?
I'm listening. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, we're good. Oh, yeah. So I would say that the quarterbacks have more value insulation, and they can also elevate a team that we may have undervalued, right? So we just saw this with Stroud. Anyone give a shit about Tank Dell? Nope. No one care about Nico Collins? Nope. Anyone think Schultz would be okay? Nope. We just move on, right? CJ Stroud made everything work. And on the other side, we saw what happened with not Tua, but
Bryce.
What is that kid's name? Bryce. Thank you. Goodness gracious. Yeah, with Bryce, right? When it comes to Marvin Harrison, he's probably going to be okay because I think that worst case is he's the Garrett Wilson in a couple of years. He's Garrett Wilson next year. He's everything. Oh, when he gets talent, when he gets targets, when he gets this, he's going to have that insulation. So the guys that I'm worried about as far as landing spot is Rome Odunze and Neighbors because they're really good. You're going to have to spend up on them, but they're not going to have the same value kind of insulation. If they go to New York, Daniel Jones is awful. They don't get the value. We could see not quite a Quentin Johnson, but a kind of Quentin Johnson. We're like, dude, get the whatever it takes, man. You got the 205, take him. Get him out of my face. So for the landing spot, quarterbacks, it's hard to judge. You just don't know who's going to elevate. I think the O-line at Washington is horrible, but if he goes out there and he burrows his way with 2 elite weapons and just starts chunking the ball, any guy goes there starts crushing it, and you're like, all right, this is my guy. Pay the iron price. He's up there. So when it comes to fading the spots, it's going to be about wide receiver 2 and 3 because I think that they're good enough that you have to pay up, but they're not good enough that if the situation is bad and it hits off, that they're not going to maintain.
All right, because it's funny because that now you covered some stuff I wasn't going to cover. To me, there's 2 that people are, and possibly 3, I'd say. But I think 2, which people are not actually giving much credit for happening for, that I think would make the world fucking burn. And the first one is if Atlanta, let's say they can't trade up, the quarterbacks are gone, and Atlanta takes one of those receivers, like it's fucking Rome or it's fucking Neighbors going with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. Same thing with the Vikings. They haven't signed Jefferson yet. What if the Vikings take with Addison, another one of those guys? Like, they're in the mix of where they could realistically be going in the top. That's pick 8 and pick 11. Like, that is the type of shit that we as fantasy managers don't even consider could happen, and it does. Now, I'm not saying that those specifically happen, but you get one where it's a jumbled landing spot, right? And it's like, man, JSN was supposed to go really high. Now he's in Seattle. Lockett. The quarterback situation's not that great. DK. People still valued him high, but it's murky, right? Where everybody would love to see, as much as the Giants are bad or Tennessee's bad, what do you know? Treylon Burks, all these other guys, they're the wide receiver 1. They don't have maybe this upside with the quarterback connection, but they're safer as you can pencil in this alpha quarterback. Or wide receiver. If you say that they go to Atlanta, what right now? If you told me Rome is the 8th pick overall to Atlanta, what do you even fucking project him to be? I'm telling you, there could be panic in the streets on what the hell that means for fantasy.
People would lose their mind.
The world will burn, man.
Dr. B pointed out, because he's a Titans fan and does a lot of the drafting for the Titans on the mock draft show.
Yeah, he does.
Anytime they take Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze or whoever the fuck it is at 7, like an offensive skill guy, that's it's not named Joe Alt, right? Everybody loves the Joe Alt pick. Everybody fucking hates when they get a skill guy because they're like, Will Levis is ass. Will Levis sucks. Just saying, we've seen it before, okay? We've seen it in Tennessee before. When a skill guy goes there with a questionable quarterback, sometimes that shit don't really fucking matter, right? All of a sudden that quarterback just force feeds them the fucking football and they have a great fantasy season and it's off to the races. But Adam, I do like the Falcons one. If it did happen, you'd go, oh, fuck.
First of all, all these Drake London truthers would be so depressed, right? Another receiver comes in, no quarterback. Oh, it'd be awful.
It's either that or you got to double down, right? You got to double down on your Drake London love. Fuck, this guy was ass, all right? He ain't going to take anything away from Drake London.
Right. Go ahead, WaLLrus.
Drake London runs this shit.
So that's the issue there, right? So look at JSN's situation, okay? JSN's value is insulated because he's Jackson Smith-Njigba, right?
Yeah.
Dude, you remember that season he had at Ohio State? He was wide receiver 1. Okay. What if Jordan Addison had gone there? He would be dead to us. He'd be Quentin Johnson with a flash, right?
Johnson. There we go.
Right?
There you go. Yep.
Yep.
I talked about this a lot last year in the value insulation JSN had, which was very similar to a Drake London, where it's a revered prospect, right? And we just are going to give a longer leash than because to the point of Rome. I mean, I like him quite a bit, but tell me if he has a slower season than we expect, and it's a situation that's murky, that this Pac-12 narrative doesn't come out and all this other shit, right? Like it's how it works.
And that's why him and Neighbors to me are the two that are sensitive. They're going to be big time picks. They're going to be up there heavy no matter where they go. If they go to a bad landing spot, like pick the worst space, the worst spot, right?
New England. I mean, would be in my opinion. Okay. I think we're saying.
Are you gonna let Neighbors slide past you at 105, 106?
No. I'm not with Neighbors. I think for me personally, I think the profile for Neighbors checks out a lot better. Now Rome, I think I'm not going to let him slip, but I understand the community perception has a lot more to lose. I think with a guy like Rome personally.
So I think that sentiment's your answer, right? You're already like, well, not quite Rome. If Rome doesn't have the right season in the wrong spot, he's going to fall off the map. But a Neighbors or the quarterback, you're going to give them, they're going to have that extra value insulation. So the concern to me is wide receiver 2 and 3. Rome and Neighbors are the ones who, the wrong spot in a slow start, a bad start, they tweak a knee. Remember Jamar Chase, right? Those guys were banged up at the beginning of the season. If Rome's banged up at the beginning of the season and he's at the Falcons, he's at the Giants, he's wide receiver 2 at the Jets, anything goes on, red lights start going off, right?
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of it does play into, like, we're playing a game where it's about fantasy production, right? But we play from a dynasty aspect, so we're always focused on value. So even if it was a situation where a super talented player goes to a bad situation, all of a sudden I'm like, good. Give him a fucking discount for me. Like, at some point it becomes where I just want to bet on him. Like, D-Bro's in here, and I love D-Bro to death. And he's talking about how bad Will Levis sucks, and I fucking acknowledge Will Levis. Like, you look at some of the metrics last year, some of these plot graphs that have come out that have been posted in our Discord from Football Insights, and you're like, oh my God, how do I defend this fucking guy? But here's the thing.
I remember that game when I remember when Hopkins had 3 TDs, though.
Right. And then I go look at how much Will Levis actually costs in a dynasty market, and because
there you go.
This narrative out there is about how fucking bad Will Levis sucks, I go, for the fucking 203, I'll find out if he's really ass or not. It's a super flex quarterback in a 12-team league. I'll fuck around and find out what am I getting at the 203 that I go, oh, I feel so much better about this. What quarterback am I going to acquire at that where I feel so much better about it than maybe a Will Levis? Because what if the fucking community's wrong? At one point, Jordan Love was dog shit. Nobody wanted to touch him with a 9-foot pole. Like, fucking guy can never get on the field. They're going to keep Rodgers forever. Oh, fuck, he's coming in this year. He finally gets to start, but this guy looks horrible. We've only seen him sporadically, and when we've seen him, he's looked like dog shit. What if that's the case with Will Levis? Or what if that's the case, with one of these other quarterbacks? The one thing I can say about at least a Will Levis is he's got a job, and he's a starting quarterback, right? That's what he needs. That's what I need. So for the price of a 203... fuck around and find out, man. Fuck around and find out.
Yeah, I do think now I definitely I'm not quite to the fuck landing spots level. I will say though that like a lot of times when the landing spots are making players fall down the board, that's when I tend to be like, all right, I'm in now on a prospect that I maybe didn't have a lot of shares of at their initial cost. So because I do want to bet on talent to win out. And for prime example, guys, and I think this is where sometimes I'll say it this way. When the talent is what we believe is there and they're going down the board, I tend to want to go to that. What I think is the biggest speak to this fuck landing spots or where I think the biggest miss is, and it's, guys, how many times have we fucking seen where there's a landing spot on a guy we're not sure of be the worst thing in the world? Clyde Edwards-Helaire to the Chiefs. Quentin Johnson because he's going to the Chargers. Quentin Johnson had every opportunity to take the world by storm if he was any fucking good, right? So, like, to me, yeah, there you go. You can keep going. When the landing spot is what is propelling your value up, I cannot run away from that faster. When you start having a guy that's really talented, in my opinion, the only difference about landing spot is to the point you were bringing up to me, and that is just trying to get a gauge on the pulse of the community and what is their value insulation. And typically, I want to go bet on the talent.
So here's the other thing, right? And the difference on landing spot and talent. I agree to bet on talent.
Yep.
This comes into, so like when we look at the real NFL draft, we see defensive line, we see O-line go up high. They go up high for two reasons, right? One, those spots are really valuable, right? O-line, D-line. The other is they don't really miss, right? Like, they're easily to project, right? If you're Joe Alt, you're going to be Joe Alt in the NFL. You're one of the Bosa's, you're going to be one of the Bosa's in the NFL. So I agree with the mentality of talent over landing spots, but it's easier to quantify landing spots, right? So give me the top 5 landing spots for wide receiver. Man, we're all going to nail them, right? All right, go bet on the top 5 talents. We're all going to miss, right? When it comes to, especially on things like quarterback. So I agree with the mentality. Where I think that we would skew it is we're better at gauging landing spot than we are on talent most of the time. But we should still bet on talent, right? If you go to the outliers, right? The Clyde Edwards-Hilairs of the world, all right, that's a bad idea. But it's still hard to gauge talent. So I agree with the mentality, but most of us are better at gauging landing spot than talent.
The best way to sum it up, Adam, and then we got one more question.
I was going to say one question, and then we got to go because Mike's got early
but
morning.
I'll say
But
this,
we're kicking
especially quarterbacks get affected so much by their weapons, get affected so much by their scheme that they're in, by their offensive line, right? There's a lot of things going there. I've seen some extremely talented quarterbacks get fucking ruined within a matter of years, right? No one's going to deny the fact that RG3 was one of the most dynamic rookie quarterbacks we've ever fucking seen, and he looked like a godsend, right? Andrew Luck was the clear 101, but RG3, you're like, fuck, Washington's onto something here. What happens? Bad injury. All of a sudden, the situation starts to deteriorate around him, and all of a sudden, RG3 is basically just a career backup and now out of the fucking league, begging for a job. I saw during the playoffs, like, sign me, I'm available. Doing great analysis, but not playing the NFL quarterback. Wide receivers, talent does win out. But I've seen some extremely talented wide receivers stuck in shitty fucking situations for long periods of time. And we play a game called Dynasty where at some point the age thing catches up and all of a sudden you're not as sexy as you once used to be. Look at 2 years ago, you would have DJ Moore truthers coming out of the fucking woodwork to defend this guy. And now you look up, he finally had a fantastic year with a quarterback who knew how to get him the football. And it's like, okay, now he's old enough, I don't really give a shit, right? Now he's just in the pack with a bunch of other guys and he's just kind of a mid. Terry McLaurin is kind of in the same fucking boat right now where you just look at it. So if Neighbors ended up in a shitty situation, hypothetically, Adam, we would make excuses for him for 2, 3, 4 years. But by the time he gets to year 5 and 6, even if he finally started producing like we thought Malik Neighbors should have been producing the whole time, it's too fucking late. All of a sudden, you're just kind of a mid and no one really gives a shit about you. Right? You're just another guy. You're another 5th round or 6th round startup. So landing spot does matter to some extent, no matter how talented you are. But I think people overblow it too much. To your point, Adam, the other extreme of it is we've propped guys up for fucking years that don't deserve it, right? Trey Sermon was never fucking talented. He had 3 fucking games in college where you're like, oh, look. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, that dude deserves to be the 110 in my rookie draft because he went to San Francisco. The first ever, you talked about the first ever podcast you do. Like just how you get into it and you're like, I don't like listening to myself. At least I can go back and hold my head high. My first ever fucking podcast I ever did for South Harmon was telling people, stay the fuck away from Trey Sermon.
There you go. That's true. He was strong on that one.
It may have been delivered really shittily with terrible audio quality, but the knowledge was on point.
There you go. I love it. This, I think, was meant to be a question. The more I've looked at it, I feel like it's a flex, but I'm curious what you guys think here. Waddle in the 112 in a start 9 lineup league, super flex for Kyler?
That's a flex. That ain't a question.
It's a super flex, literally.
It's a super flex.
It's a Kyler Murray. I mean, because Jalen Waddle, I'm on record as thinking he's overvalued, but like realistically, Jalen Waddle, he's in this tier 3 for me, in a jumbled tier, and in a start 9 PPR league, that's not a needle mover. He's going to have to be a production bump, and with Tyreek Hill in town, I don't see that. So it's not that asset in this type of a setting just doesn't mean that much, listen, 112 could be a nice little player. I don't really know necessarily what that is going to be today, but I'm happily consolidating this to go get Kyler, who I think is still a top 10 quarterback in Superflex. And in this market, it shouldn't exist. So that's smash.
We've seen Kyler's floor, and it's coming off an ACL injury, with Hollywood Brown as your only weapon. Trey McBride having to emerge late.
Speaking of landing spots, you know what Arizona is going to do, and I'd be willing to bet a lot on it, is draft a receiver at that 4th spot, buddy.
Yep.
But you've seen his floor, right?
Yeah.
It's 19 fucking fantasy points per game. It's QB1 territory. It's top 8 quarterback territory. We've also seen what his ceiling could be. 24, 25 fantasy points per game at the quarterback position. That's QB1 overall shit. You're telling me I could trade a tier 3 wide receiver in a jumbled mess and the last pick in the first round and a start 9 where having elite quarterbacks really does fucking matter? Yeah. That's a flex.
All right, that was a flex because this is our last question. So, all right, using taxi to tank. This is the last one, Steve. Steve Kerr, I love this fucking avatar, man. It's one of my favorites. 40-0 version. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. 10-team, 1 quarterback, start 11, 2 tight ends. Draft based on standings, not points for. Lineup projects A-Rich, Warren, Spears, Marv, Neighbors, Rome, Kincaid, Bowers, Tank, Downs, Wandale, 3 first and 25. Try to compete or put all relevant players on the taxi and shoot for the 101 is the question.
Oh, that's some shady ass shit, but if there's no league rules against it, go for it, I guess. Like I put in there, I assume everybody plays competitively and you don't stash highly productive fucking young players on your taxi squad, right? And you start a competitive lineup every single week. So that's at least how I like to do it. That's kind of the standard, but you can always do you if there's not a league rule. It's on the commissioner to make sure that's a fucking league rule. I play best ball, so you don't have to fucking worry about that. No taxis. You can't do this shit.
Now, so in 10-team, 1 quarterback, right? Like, A-Rich, you can't taxi, I don't think, unless this is one of those 2-year ones, that's crazy to me. I hate those.
Yeah,
but
some of those people playing those 2 years or 3-year taxis.
But so, like, already you got A-Rich, Warren. So, like, I'll put it like this: if you're telling me you're gonna field out there, like you listed me no other receivers other than Marv, Neighbors, and Rome. So like if you're fielding Pop Douglas, Kendrick Bourne's, like if that's who you're fielding with those 3 guys on the taxi squad, like I've always been more so like if you want to, for example, if you have Marv, okay, and you have a pretty shitty team, but you leave him on the taxi, like obviously you'd rather put Marv in your lineup, but that's fine. But if you start putting a goon squad of rookies in your taxi, I think that's probably where you could end up making the league riot. So I would just say, if there's no bylaws and you want to do that and explore it, do your thing. I just would be careful about the extremes in which you go about it because you'll probably get a rule change and people hating you for the rest of your life. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you, same guys. Like, if you're leaning on it, I'm one of those that in general, like rules like this on the taxi and the tanking stuff, they're meant to be there for specific reasons. They're not really meant to kind of abuse. Like that almost feels like cheating, right? There's certain things that are okay. There's certain things that aren't. Like you could start no one, right? Just be like, hey, well, I'm just not going to start a single player all season. Like, come on, man. Like, let's play the game. The other is like, to me, like there's a lot of value there. Like that team is young, but like that team can compete, right? Like, A-Rich, a couple of those big receivers. You got Kincaid. Bowers is probably overvalued in 3 first. Man, a couple of first. Go buy some crusty running backs to go along with Spears. There's some upside there. Warren, those guys have some upside. Kincaid at receiver, Kincaid at tight end, and then you got Tank and Downs. Like that's a team that can make it to the tournament, right? Like especially if you spend those 3 first wisely, or even just one of those first, right? Like 1 first, and you're going to go find someone who's aging out and go grab a, Henry, Chandler, and something else for a first, right? You just hey, give me the package. Give me all your guys that can get some points at running back. That team can compete, right? Like, is it going to be 1 or 2 in the league? No, especially not in a 10-team. But A-Rich, Neighbors. There's some pop there, right? Like that's a team that can get into the playoffs, and you start to roll the dice.
Yeah, I think that's actually what I was gonna say is also, like, okay, there's 2 things I'll say. One, I kind of use this especially as I'm playing in more leagues and I see a lot more shit happen in leagues. I kind of use it as like the golden rule, right? Like, if I'm going to do something in the league and you're asking a question like this, you kind of have that feeling of, I don't know if I should be doing this. Like, ask if someone else was doing what you're about to do in the league, if you would be pissed if you think it's shady. And if it's anywhere close to that, I would stay away from it personally. Like, the way where I'm at, I probably just, it ain't worth winning my league that way or winning a player, an asset that way for me personally. So that's the way I think about it. And then the other thing is, okay, now if you just risk and reward, like the 25 class and the 10 team, if you do that and you piss off your leagues for the 101 and the 25 class, I'm not saying it's not valuable, but like, did that really fucking, what did you get by doing that? Where, to the point here, if you set this lineup, I think you probably got a 50-50 shot, 40-60 shot probably maybe even, of getting into the playoffs, or we're in a position where maybe you want to move some of these 25 first and just see how it plays out. So I'd probably set your lineup normally, and not like try to go get that 101 personally. But if the laws are what they are and the bylaws, and there's no talking about tanking, and you've seen other people kind of get aggressive with tanking, do your thing. That's my answer, I guess, is what I'll say.
I like it. Adam, I need you to do me a favor before we bounce out of here.
Tell me.
Dr. B is out here talking shit like I'm the one who let Malik Neighbors slide in Monday's mock draft. All right?
Okay. What'd you do?
Like, we need to get some fucking facts straight here, Dr. B. Okay?
What happened? Give me the real.
Monday's mock draft, right? He even clipped it. He put it in there. Dr. B, I want you to go back and fucking look. Who's the one who actually stopped the slide of Malik Neighbors in that mock draft? Me, at the 109, right? I didn't pick at 8. I didn't pick at 7. I didn't pick at fucking 6. Who's the guy who stopped it at 109? This guy, all right? You got a bone to pick. Don't tell me I'm fucking lying. Go pick it with Fizzle and Koopa. Those are the guys who did it.
Damn. Look at Mike, man. See, that's what I mean about Mike. Mike is quick to throw everybody else under the bus, man. I know it's just I wasn't on the show. That's why I'm not getting thrown under the bus, but it could have very easily been me thrown under the bus. WaLLrus, man, appreciate you coming on. This was a blast. Spitting the wisdom to you, man.
Tell the people, too, like, where can they check out what you're doing? What are you doing, right?
Yes, thank you.
What can they tap into? Where they can find you at?
Man, so obviously I do a lot of crypto stuff, so I'm big in a ecosystem called Pulse Chain. It's sort of like Ethereum. It's kind of a competitor to that. We launch all kinds of things on top. I'm the head of growth and adoption for Liquid Loans. We have a DeFi product that does 0% interest loans, all kinds of really cool stuff. Do a lot of neat stuff like moving around through El Salvador, crypto stuff everywhere, all that kind of fun stuff. But more importantly, I hang out with these two legends, right? It's the funnest stuff I've done in all week, man. So you guys can find me at WaLLrus Official on Twitter, anywhere with liquidloans.io. That's our website, all the company stuff. But man, what an absolute blast. Legends. It's a fun stream, guys.
Love it, man. I appreciate you hopping on with us. This was a blast. I love, like, the story of South Harmon. Like, it's funny, you found us, the algorithm you said finally got, like, a lot, everything it feels like for South Harmon that ends up being something that you don't know is going to be great, but turns into, like, awesome. All organic shit, man. The South Harmon School, the Expo, everybody that we have, doing content with us now, it's all from just, like, good vibes and good people like yourself. So love the shout out on Twitter. Love the opportunity to come kick it with you, man. So on that note, we will see you back here, same time, same place, next week for AMA. Unfortunately, we don't have WaLLrus Official with us. Go check out everything he's doing on Liquid Loans as well as his X handle. We will see you back here. We're out of this thing. Peace.
Peace.